It was a late summer evening when Daniel, a traveling salesman from Chicago, found himself driving down an endless stretch of highway in rural Kansas. His GPS had stopped working hours ago, and the only light came from the pale glow of his headlights and the occasional flicker of a neon sign on the roadside. His eyes were heavy, his body aching after 10 hours behind the wheel when he saw it up ahead. A weathered sign flashing in dull red letters. Vacancy. Sunset Motel. Relieved, he pulled into the cracked parking lot. The motel looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1960s, its paint peeling and its windows fogged with age, but at that moment, it was salvation. Daniel walked into the lobby where a thin man in a faded uniform greeted him with a stiff smile. The air smelled of mildew and something sweetly rotten. The clerk's voice was calm, almost rehearsed, as he handed over a brass key attached to a heavy tag with the number 6 engraved on it. Breakfast at 7. Checkout by 10. Quiet hours after midnight, the man said, his eyes not quite meeting Daniel's. Exhausted, Daniel nodded, signed the guest book, and carried his bag to room 6. The room was simple but clean enough. 2 twin beds, faded curtains, and a small TV with rabbit ear antennas. He showered, lay down, and was asleep within minutes. Sometime after midnight, he awoke to a faint knocking sound. It was soft, rhythmic, like knuckles rapping against wood. At first, he thought it was coming from the next room, but when he sat up, he realized it was at his door. He froze, listening. The knocking stopped, replaced by a child's giggle echoing faintly in the hallway. Chills ran down his spine. He forced himself to believe it was just another guest kid playing a prank, but when he looked through the peephole, the hallway was empty. He barely slept for the rest of the night. At dawn, he went down to the dining room, hoping for coffee. There were only a few other guests, each one pale, sitting perfectly still at their tables. They barely touched their food, and none of them looked up when he walked in. The silence was unnerving. The clerk from the night before brought him coffee, his smile unchanged, eyes still avoiding Daniel's. Daniel mumbled a thanks, trying to shake off the unease. When he checked out later that morning, the clerk insisted on reminding him, "Safe travels. Remember, the road only goes one way." Daniel forced a laugh, tossed his bag into the trunk, and drove off, telling himself it was just a creepy old motel, nothing more. But hours later, after driving in what felt like a straight line, Daniel saw something that made his stomach drop. The same neon sign flickered ahead. Vacancy. Sunset Motel. His knuckles tightened around the steering wheel. It was impossible. He hadn't turned once, hadn't circled back. Yet there it was, the same cracked parking lot, the same peeling paint. Against his better judgment, he pulled in again, convincing himself maybe it was a chain of motels, though he'd never heard of one called Sunset Motel. Inside, everything was exactly the same. The same smell, the same clerk with the same stiff smile. "Room 6, the man said, sliding the same brass key across the counter. This time, Daniel refused. He asked for a different room, any other number. The clerk hesitated, his smile faltering for just a moment, then handed him another key. Room 8. When Daniel opened the door, his blood ran cold. The room looked identical to room 6, but on the desk sat a worn leather journal. Curiosity outweighed fear, and he opened it. The first page was a list of names and dates. Some went back decades. Flipping through, he realized it was a guest book of sorts, but not the same one he had signed in the lobby. The entries grew stranger as they went on. Scribbles, desperate notes like, "It won't let me leave," and "The road circles back. Don't fall asleep." The final entry made his heart pound. Daniel Carter, room 6. Trapped. He dropped the book, backing away as if it might bite. His full name. Today's date. His mind raced. Someone was playing a cruel trick, or he was losing his grip on reality. That night, the knocking returned. Louder this time, insistent, as though whoever was outside would break the door down. Daniel shouted, demanded they leave him alone. Silence followed. Then, slowly, the doorknob began to turn on its own. Terrified, Daniel pushed a chair under the handle and stayed awake until dawn, clutching the brass key like a weapon. The next morning, he bolted from the room and drove away again, this time speeding as fast as he could. He ignored the rules of the road, desperate to put miles between himself and that cursed place. Hours later, when he saw a diner along the road, he nearly wept with relief. He pulled over, rushed inside, and ordered food, barely tasting it as he told the waitress about the motel. Her face drained of color. "You mean the Sunset Motel?" she whispered. "That place burned down in 1971. Everyone inside died. They say the road keeps pulling people back to it." Daniel's fork clattered against the plate. He didn't want to believe her, but deep down, it explained everything. Against her warnings, he drove on, determined not to see that sign again. For a few blissful hours, he thought he'd escaped. But when the sun dipped low, there it was. The dull red glow in the distance, flickering letters spelling out the same words. His screams echoed in the empty car as he sped past, refusing to stop this time. But the sign only grew brighter in his rearview mirror until finally, he realized with bone-deep dread that the road had bent beneath him without his notice, curving back toward the motel. The last entry in the journal was true. Daniel Carter, trapped forever. Some say his car still sits in the lot of the Sunset Motel, rusting beside dozens of others. Keys still in the ignition. And if you're unlucky enough to drive that lonely stretch of highway, you may see the neon sign calling to you, offering rest. But if you stop, if you take the key to room 6, you'll never leave.